Hi, and thank you for tuning in. So, one of the most important levels an organization can get to, a business or a company can get to, is if you are a founder or even a top level leader in a company, you get to a level where growth is really fast. And with growth, which is a good problem, but with growth, you need to grow your team as well. And when growing your team, a lot of top level leaders, a lot of founders feel like it's very difficult to replace themselves. They have done things in a certain way. It has worked, hence the growth. Clients are happy and they're worried about how do I transfer this to my team. Not only that, but also there's a level or there's a phase where the relationship with the team is more where your team always wants your advice, always wants your input on every possible step of the process. And this frustrates team leaders and founders of businesses and companies because they want to do the thing they want to do and hand over this critical, very important job for their team, but also they want them to do it right, get the same results or even better, without having to come back to them all the time. So this kind of challenge, I've heard this challenge this challenge before. It has been expressed to me by many founders where they just feel like I wish if my team could get things done at a very high level without having to come to me all the time about every single small step of the process. And I'm going to try to speak to that today. And the very first point when trying to get to that place, a place where your team can deliver and hopefully exceed the job that you have done without your continuous supervision or micro management. So the first step, the first point, is that you cannot transfer your art to your team. Now, what do I mean by that? You have done things in a certain way that has created results, wonderful results, created a lot of growth in your business and company. But it was your way, it was your style, it was your art. Each one of us, we all have our own art and style when doing things. So let's imagine if you were literally an artist and I'm painting a specific piece of art. I have my own way of doing it, right? I have my own process. I have my own way to get myself in flow. I have my own way of stroking the brush. But at the end of the day, if I was trying to teach another artist, the ultimate goal is to get a specific result. It's not to transfer that specific art to the artist. So, as a company leader, as a founder of the business, your ultimate goal should be unleashing that potential in your team and keep focus on the result you want, not on teaching them, showing them how you do it specifically. Right? I used to do this all the time back in back in sports where younger athletes would come and try to ask for some tips or advice. And what I always try to do is give them the fundamentals, the basics, give them what they should hope to get, but I wouldn't give them how it worked out for me, right? Because it was very specific to my own thinking. It was very specific to my own body, for example. And every person, every athlete has their own, they're built in a different way. They see things in a different way. So your team sees things in a different way, each one of them. The world is different in their head. So you need to avoid trying to kind of create a copy of yourself in your team. And this was what creates the frustration, because you can't see results. Because your team are going into, and when I'm talking about a team right here, I'm talking about whether it was a sales team, whether it was a team that manages your clients, like a relationship manager. And they can't go into these relationships, into these potential clients, trying to sell them with their mind occupied with, how do I do it my boss's way? How do I do it the team founder or the company's founder way? So that's the very first, very critical and important point. The second point is, so what do we do instead? What do I give my team instead? Right? It can't be just, they can't just wing it. They can't just, we can't completely keep it wide open without any kind of values. And this is the second point. Your job as the founder, as the leader, is to set and put down the values of the company, the values of the business, the values of how to get clients, what kind of clients. So you're putting the fundamentals, and let's just call them values. So when I work for you, all I need to know is, what do you value exactly? What should I keep in mind going into a presentation or a discussion or a conversation with a potential client? Because those values have worked for you as the leader and the founder. They're the blueprint, the DNA of the business you started. That you can give to your team, and then they can develop their own art on how to get the job done within or from the source of these values. So one of the most beautiful books I read about this is called Getting Naked. And although the main point of the book is something different than this point specifically, but the subject of the book, a founder of a consulting company, has a team of incredible performers as if they were all the founders of the business. And he was able to get to that level by giving them, showing them, living in front of them the values that got his work at the early stages to work, to succeed. He transferred the values only. This is how I look at clients. This is what I hope to get when I get in a conversation with a client. This is the type of clients that works for us. A close relationship is very important. Integrity is very important. It's not about paying us more, but we have to go and do it in a way that we don't want to do it. So these are values. You set these values. Whether you were the only founder or you have partners, a top level leadership team, you get together and you set these values of the business and the company to give to your team. And from there, each team member needs to only know these values by heart, live them, actually see why they work, right? So it's not just a transfer of words and knowledge and information, but instead you're living proof as the leader of this business. If the business is successful and growing fast, you're living proof that these values has worked for your clients and for yourself. So setting the values, setting this foundation is the ultimate and only job you need to do as a leader. So then, how do I get the team to deliver on these values with high performance, high results more of the time? Now, you can look back for yourself as a leader, and you can tell that a lot of what you have done that has worked came from intuition. Like, you knew what client to avoid, in a sense, what client to actually try and get to work with, which deals you had to walk away from, in which meeting did you have to perhaps get intense or relax. It wasn't always based on a strategy. There is a lot of intuition happening. There is a lot of you're in the moment, you're in the field, and you're responding to what's happening in the moment. Your goal as a leader would be to bring that aliveness that is already in every member of your team when dealing with clients, when trying to communicate with clients, when trying to close clients. You want them to depend on their intuition. And why is that important? Because that was one of the ultimate goals when we that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. You don't want them to come back to you for every single step of the process. And in order to do that, they need to connect to something deeper within them that feels so natural to you already. Right? Because if you're communicating with if you're frustrated right now, let's say you're in this dilemma right now. One of the things you might notice is when communicating with your team, a lot of what they find difficult or troubling sounds like common sense to you. And it might frustrate you that this is why don't they get it? It's very common sense to me, right? And you might get into a discussion where your team member tells you that, okay, so with this client, boss, you did 1, 2, 3. So now with this other client, I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3. And you might respond with, no. These specific moves or steps worked for this client. They don't have to work with the other client. And this is what I'm talking about. We're not transferring strategies and steps to our team. We want to give them the base to stand on and then let their intuition take on. Let them play from their strengths rather than your strengths. Now, every person has worked and lived from that intuition at one point, if not every day. So the question here is, if I want to follow my intuition, the knowing in me when I'm dealing with a client, when I'm in a meeting with a client or a potential client. What might get in the way? That's the good question. And the simple answer is, if I was a team member and my mind is preoccupied before I get into a meeting by, oh my God, I'm worried. Am I going to pull this off? Am I going to be able to do it my boss's way? Am I going to get it right? Am I going to be able to sign this client? If I do, am I going to be able to deliver? And oh my God, am I going to be able to get the bonus if by the end of the month or by the end of the year, if I get this client? So there are all sorts of different thoughts, and the tags of these thoughts are worry, doubt, insecurity, and so on. So if we thought about this as a two-level square, let's say I'm gonna try and draw this in a very simple manner. Something that looks like this, right? And at the bottom are these kind of feelings: worry, anxiety, insecurity, right? At the bottom. And at the top, which you as a founder might have experienced and it created success for you, is you go in enthusiastic, excited, happy, confident. So these go on the top box, right? So we have the box, we have two parts of it. If your team member goes in at the bottom side of the box, they're not going to be able to connect with their intuition. They're not going to be able to listen to their intuition. Listen to what would be the most appropriate response for me to do in this specific situation or scenario. And one of the ways to get them out of this is to work with your team and get them out of this mentality by just telling them you do not need you don't need to copy me, you don't need to do it my way. You know, you probably hired them because they do have the potential, and you can show them and tell them that you see that potential in them, and that other than knowing the values, they do not have to stress about the steps, right? And each person can reflect. Perhaps you're a team member right now, so I'm going to talk to you as a team member, not the leader. You at one point of your life have listened to this intuition, and it's worked out wonderfully for you. Just look back, and it could be really anything. It could be your choice of major, university, refusing a job that even though it paid more and you went for the other one, perhaps your current one, and it was a good call. You followed a specific intuition that does not depend on analyzing input, right? It's a feeling. You know it. And in order to trust that feeling, the rule is you cannot listen to that feeling from a place of a busy mind, a worried mind, an anxious mind, an insecure mind. It doesn't work that way. You need to trust that you have it in you inherently. You don't need to learn this. It's not transferred to you from your boss. You have it in you to listen to your own knowing, and with knowing the values of the business already, you can do the whole thing on your own. Right? So I'm going to go back to the founder now. You need to show your team that you trust them. Right? Again, back to point number 1. You need to let go of your own art. You need to let go of the idea that you need to see your own art on 10 different people that work for you. That's not going to be very helpful. That's not going to get you to the point that we want to get you to today, which is a team that is powerful, that are all leaders, that deliver with results that you should hope can exceed and outperform anything you've done before. And in order to do that, you have to recognize that you are you and every other person is their own. Now, there are skills to be improved, perhaps. And this happens on an individual level with each member. But the foundations here are: do not force your art on your team. Let them develop their own art. In order to develop their own art, they just need to know the values of the business and the company as guiding points in the business in dealing with clients and potential clients. And third, listening to the intuition that you have listened to that got you the results you got already. You want that to happen to your team. And in order for them to connect to the knowing they already have and connected to, is they need to get out of the mentality of worry, anxiety, insecurity. Am I going to be able to deliver? Am I a good member to the team? Am I a valuable member to the team? And they need to move to the top part of the box where they're enthusiastic, fun, excited, confident, and you'll able to see the whole thing shifting and changing. So I hope the video was helpful, and I hope you could perhaps, if you're the founder, then give it to your team members to watch. And if you are one of the team members, you happen to be one of the team members, a salesperson, then perhaps your leader, your boss can watch it as well. And I'll talk to you soon.